Hello and welcome to CppChat. We have a very special episode today. We've kind of turned the tables. Instead of having the chat room listening to what we're saying and watching us, we've invited the chat room to join us. So the chat room is here. No, this is the C++ Now episode, and this is just people who want to participate. They're going to talk to us a little bit about what the conference is like and what the experience is. As you know, we do the episodes kind of have a couple of things of the format that we always follow. One of them is that I always read the disclaimer, and the disclaimer in this case is that if you come to C++ Now, we guarantee a wonderful time, but we do not guarantee wonderful weather. So, the other thing we always do is we talk about what's going on CppCast. I already gave Jason grief because I almost had a heart attack. This conference just whizzes by. It's the end of the week before I know it, and we started the week by having a CppCast. I'm expecting to see that on Friday, and I wake up the first day of the conference and I look at that and it's like, the week's already gone past. CppCast has a couple of interviews that Rob did at Build, yes. Right? Was that just last week or was that the week before?
Oh, I'm losing track of time.
That happens. That's conference fatigue or something. Anyway, so check out those announcements from Microsoft. And I think that's all we need. And I'm going to kind of round robin the mic, and I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, talk about why you're here, what you do, those kinds of things, and then tell us something that has been particularly memorable about this particular C++ Now. So I'm going to start with Jason. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name's Jason Turner, and as John said, I'm co-host of CppCast, and I'm a trainer and contractor and independent. And this is my 4th year now at C++ Now, 3rd year speaking, 2 talks this year. It's really hard to pick something memorable, particularly being the first person to go. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about that. But it's always great to come here. There's always great interactions with everyone. And it's always great to speak here because you get a really great audience of people that are willing to talk back to you and ask questions and answer the things that you're throwing out to them.
Let me ask you this. You've spoken at other conferences. They just want to hear your answer. You've spoken at other conferences. How is doing a session here different from doing a session in CppCon? Now, I'm not talking about when you're doing a plenary session at CppCon, but a regular session at CppCon. How does that contrast with here?
The people that come here, I don't want to make it sound harsh, but it's almost like you should expect to get people pushing back on you here, right? So if you put something up on your slides that isn't correct, or if you have a controversial idea, people are going to call you out on it, and you get the opportunity to really think about your answer, and you get the opportunity to learn new things, even though you're the one speaking. And that's what separates it, I think, from my experiences so far at CppCon. But those are the only 2 that I've been to so far.
Okay. All right. Morris, and I'll tell the viewers, Morris is wearing this beautiful green shirt, which you can only have, you only get to have if you're a volunteer here at the conference. So Morris is here, and Robin's here, and they're volunteers, and Jonathan's also a volunteer, but he's fashionably ungreen today. We'll let him defend himself when it's his turn. So anyway, Morris.
Yeah. So I'm Morris. I'm from Darmstadt in Germany. And as John said, I'm a volunteer, and it's my first time at CPP Now. Well, I can talk about some special things I noticed about this conference. Well, it's not really the presentations that make this conference special. I think it's about the interactions beside this conference, because you can always go to the internet and watch a talk on YouTube. Whether you do that or not is another question, because I tend to be lazy about that. But yeah, those you have those interactions an entire week, and another thing is that you have the feeling of being isolated. You're high up in the mountains and nothing is around you. And in the other conferences, you're probably at a hotel or at a convention center, and the city is right next by. And yeah, that's also.
We don't call that isolated. We call that focused.
Yeah.
So, did we work you to death as a volunteer? Did we work you to death as a volunteer? Did we overwork you?
Not really.
Okay. Would you recommend being a volunteer to others?
Definitely, yes.
All right.
Well, hi, my name is Kjell Hedstrom, originally from Sweden, tiny accent, but I live in Colorado now. I'm a tech lead for Netmon, a product made by Logarithm, and we work with malicious network detection and network forensics. My highlights from this conference so far has been that template programming is much less verbose now and easier to write, and the allocator aware containers, which can have a significant speed up, I think, for at least the product I'm working on.
Excellent.
And I love the weather here.
And I want to compliment you on being such a snappy dresser.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so my name is Anastasia Kazakova. I'm actually from Russia, from a company named JetBrains. So we do tools for developers, and I'm actually working for C-Line as a product marketing manager. So I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time for CPP Now. I don't know how it happened that I haven't been here before. But I really enjoyed the experience, especially in terms of that it's really important for us as a tool vendors to see the cutting edge of the language and to understand how the committee feels, how the community feels, what is going to come, because we need to be prepared. I actually talked about what we see currently, what in the language, what are the problems, but I need to learn more, definitely, about the language and to understand how are we going to cope with that in future. So that was my main goal for coming here. And I would also like to say that I'm really impressed with the lightning talks that went actually yesterday and the day before yesterday, because they were both amusing and fun and also very useful. And that's really great. I like the experience. And it's such a pity that we don't have a third day for lightning talks, actually.
All right. So you just recently spoke at ACCU.
Yeah.
How would you contrast the audiences, the experience, both as an attendee, I guess, and as a speaker?
Yeah, so I was actually doing the same talk at ACCU just about a month ago, and here at CPP Now. I actually had to cut it a little bit because I decided, I don't know why, again, I decided to make here a short session, and at ACCU I was doing a long session that was like, oh, why did I actually do that? But the story is that I really like the audience here. So both audience were very interested in what I was talking about. Seems that not every C++ developer actually understands what's the problem for the tool with the language. But here I really got lots of interesting ideas how to cope. So about our feeling about the future common standards and some things like concepts and models that we really hope would save us. And I got lots of interesting suggestions what we could do and how we could work out some problems that we currently have. So that I didn't get actually at ACCU at that big point.
Okay, thank you very much. I missed Alex. Alex, would you unzip your... It's not zipper at all.
No, I can't zip it. So my name is Alex Zaitsev, and I'm a volunteer here. It's my first time at CPP Now too, and what can I say? It's really, really great conference for C++ people, because for me it's really good chance to learn a lot of things, new things for me about C++. I learned a lot about allocators, about C++20 future, about template metaprogramming, of course, Boost HANA or Brigand libraries. Also, I got acquainted a lot with these famous people in C++ world, like Jason Turner, and someone else.
Some other famous person whose name I just forgot.
Yeah. So also, it's a good chance to announce something, your proposals to C++, like context per allocator. It's really good theme, and it's amazing, really amazing for me. And I hope that in in the next year I also will be volunteer at CPP Now. So thanks a lot.
Okay, excellent. Robin? Now, Robin's also a volunteer. He's on duty, so we won't let him sit down.
Hi, I'm Robin Kuzmin, originally from Russia, but the recent 4 years I live in Greater Seattle area. This is my first time at CPP Now, and last year at CppCon was my first year at CPP conferences at all. So my perception of these conferences is that I see so many highly professional people that I don't understand most of the things that they are talking about, which lets me realize how huge the mountain of knowledge is in front of me for me to master, and it lets me realize that I need to assign higher priority to mastering all those things as soon as possible in order to be able to understand more and more at the later conferences. So I'm really happy that I have such an opportunity to participate in this conference as a volunteer. And what I want to say also that gaining new knowledge in this conference started for me from just reading participants' profiles, following their links and stuff like that, looking at what they do. And it already gave me lots of things to consider, to broaden my experience and knowledge, and to start gaining more knowledge about. So I strongly encourage everybody to participate in this either as an attendee or volunteer. Thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Malte Skarupke. I'm an AI programmer at Avalanche Studios in New York. Also my first time here at CppChat Now, and I came here to give a talk about sorting, where I did make a controversial statement, which was that you should probably replace your use of standard sort with using Radix sort, because I generalized Radix sort so that it can sort most of your types, basically. I got no pushback on that controversial statement, so from the audience when I give the talk, so I think people believe me on that.
Are you surprised by that?
Well, I got exactly the pushback I expected, which was like these edge cases and those edge cases. But I'm totally fine not handling all possible edge cases. Like as long as I handle the vast majority of the important cases. So, yeah.
So there are people here who are on the standards committee. Did any of them talk to you about?
No, I got nothing from the standards committee. Yeah, no, but otherwise. Yeah, it's a fun conference to talk to people, because it's like no matter how nerdy or no matter how much of an edge case you want to talk about and how small like the topic is, like people here seem to know about everything in C++. So it's kind of fun to just even listen to the conversations that are going on. So yeah, I'm having a good time.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jens Speller. I'm running Meeting C++ and been returning now since 2012 to every C++ Now conference, and this year we had a bit more snow than usual, but the weather is, it's always it's always a surprise which weather we get here, and it's always beautiful in Aspen. What I enjoy about the conference, I think it's very relaxing to be here for a week, and in contrast to other conferences like CppCon, I find that being here is not as exhausting. It's a conference which is also like a bit like a holiday, and you get to hang out with a lot of cool people and talk about all kinds of things. And this is kind of the force and best track here, like these talks and the talks in the bar, the talks in the breaks and in between. So it's always very interesting, and I gave a talk on communities and comparing what Qt and Boost could learn from each other.
Hi, I'm Odin Holms. I work in Germany on microcontrollers, and this is my first C++ Now. This was the talk that I was the most nervous about beforehand, because I'd heard about serious audience pushback. But I must say, when you see conversations and other talks with people who are kind of your idols, and they're getting pushed back, and it's all very civil. I think people disagree but are very agreeable, and there's a very strong sense of community. You can just stand next to anyone and listen what they're talking to, and maybe even join if you're smart enough. And I really have a feeling of sort of where things get baked now, right? Where things are made, where ideas happen. And I think it's only a very small fraction that one sees over the internet from the videos. It's a lot more sensory overload when you're actually here. And anyone who hasn't been here yet, I have a few pieces of advice. Bring shorts, a t-shirt, sunscreen, chapstick, snow clothing, and come.
Hi, my name is Vittorio Romeo. I work at Bloomberg. I'm originally from Sicily, but right now I'm living in London. And I agree with everyone else. This conference is amazing. I love the talks. I love the opportunity to talk to people about very complicated and arcane metaprogramming stuff. But one thing that hasn't been pointed out yet, and I feel like it's very, very nice, this year the keynotes were about other languages. And basically we had an expert from Rust, D, and Haskell come to the conference and explain how the strengths and weaknesses of those other languages and compare them with C++. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn from those languages, and also the other way around. The best part, I think, is that I'm able to approach them afterwards and just discuss with them about those languages and about C++ and get a lot of insight from those discussions and arguments. So I'm really happy to be here, and it's highly recommended to everyone.
So do you want to comment? Did you have a discussion with Ali on D? You want to talk about your little conversation?
So John is asking to comment on my discussion with Ali on D. So Ali wrote a very nice book about programming in D, and I captured him after the talk, and we spent a few hours just playing around with D and trying to see the generated assembly, how it compares to C++, and discuss about the metaprogramming capabilities. And I felt like that being able to talk to him, like next to me, with our laptops and trying out stuff together and basically discussing face-to-face is really, really nice and a very effective way of sharing knowledge and understanding each other's languages.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Müller. I'm a German computer science student. This is also my first time here, and I'm a student volunteer and speaker. And John, when I got the nice green t-shirt, Jackie said that I should wear it when I'm on duty, and I'm currently not on duty, so I'm not wearing the t-shirt. So, yeah, I'm also a speaker, so I'll be giving a talk tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that, although it is a little bit controversial, so this could be interesting. And I just like at this conference that you can meet so many cool people. I've met people for the first time I only knew online before from Slack or Twitter or something like that, and it's just really nice to meet them in person and discuss with them in person.
So I'm Peter Bindels. I work at TomTom International, and in my free time and also occasionally at work, I create or update open source software. And I'm here. I was here as a speaker for the first time that I've been here, and I was giving a talk on my marking framework, which I wrote in 2008. So it's actually kind of out of date. But the thing is that it's the things that are now in discussion about reflection are the things that could be replacing it. And the funny thing is that when I'm around here, I notice that everybody knows about reflection. Everybody seems to know about all the newest proposals. And if you just look around, you find the people that wrote proposals, you find the people that organize the conferences, and everybody is so incredibly open to collaborating, discussing, and even discussing the most controversial topics. So as one example, I put a slide in where I argumented that having a throwing destructor is perfectly fine, and that led to a healthy discussion. So I'm really happily surprised about that.
I'm Matt Calabrese. I'm a software engineer at Google, where I do library development. I've been coming here since the beginning. I missed 2 years, so since 2005. So 9 years, I think, 2005, 2006, whenever it was. And I've been going to standards committee meetings for the past 2 or 3 years or so. I've also spoken at this conference multiple times. This year I gave 2 talks. One of them was on generic programming and its relation to reference types. And I also gave a talk on a library that I created called call, which allows you to generate arguments at the call side of a function. I just want to speak a little bit about being a speaker at this conference. I think it's an absolutely amazing experience. I've watched videos of people giving talks at this conference before, and lots of times you'll read in comments people being like, "Oh, people are interrupting the speaker with all this information, and like I just want to hear the speaker talk." And I just want to comment that that's what this conference is all about. Like, it's just fantastic. Like, both the speakers and the people there are all about the interactions between the audience, and like videos just do not show that happening. And like I know that when I give talks here, I purposely bring out things that are controversial or that I'm unsure about, because I really, really value the opinions of people in the audience. And and it makes sense, because when you look at the types of people who are in the audience, it's such a high volume of just amazingly talented C++ experts, people who are committee members. I think we probably have one of the highest volume of like committee member and C++ experts to attendee ratio, average attendee ratio than any other conference. It's just absolutely amazing. And like you're learning something at every single talk. It's just, you can't like overstate like how fantastic the experience is here. You just have to start coming.
Well, it wasn't really intended to be a commercial, but I'm okay with that. So, Matt, you've been speaking here, I'm pretty sure longer than anybody else in the panel. You want to have any thoughts on how the conference has changed since you were first here?
Yeah. So when we first started, it was only like, I want to say 80 or 90 people at this conference.
Yeah.
Is that about right? Yeah. I think now we're at 140 or so.
The last year it was BoostCon, it was 85.
Last year it was BoostCon too.
The first year it was C++ Now, it jumped up to 135.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's gone to 150, and it's been close to that every year since then. So 5 years of at least 140 people probably.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first thing that's obviously changed. We're still like a relatively small conference, but there is a noticeable difference in that between the earlier years and the later years. It's still small enough that you basically know everybody who's here, and you get to interact with anybody you want to, whether they're like people have mentioned, people that you consider heroes in the C++ community, people who've written papers that you've read. It's just fantastic. I think the only thing that's changed, I'm trying to think of. It's a lot harder to decide on what talks to go to lately. Like the volume of good talks this year was absolutely fantastic, and it's just really been amazing. I'm trying to think. Some average, some of the normal attendees have been not coming quite as often, and I hope we can bring them back. That's the only thing that, if I stop it being a commercial for a moment, I would really like for some of the people who started the conference to start coming back. That's the only thing negative I think I could say about this conference.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things about any conference is, particularly if it's a good conference and it develops the kind of community we have, what can happen is that you get the same people coming back every time, which is on the face good, but those people will eventually age out, and then your conference just dies because the new people weren't coming in. And I was really gratified. It's a bit of a confession on my part that I wasn't tracking this like I should have been, but I asked the question at the beginning of the conference. I said, how many people are here for the first time? And I was shocked at how many new people we've brought in. And that's why, even though registration is slightly down this year, as I said, it's probably 10 lower than we'd like it to be. That's not worrying me when I realize, wow, look at all these new people. Because one of the things that Bryce, who's not here, he had the theory that he's started going to standards meetings, and he meets all these people who he's met at C++ Now. It was like, oh, I know all these people. And his theory to me is, he says, John, if somebody comes to C++ Now and they get to know people in the standards committee and they decide maybe they want to be on the standards committee, and then their boss comes to them and says, you're going to 3 standards committee meetings and you want to go to C++ Now, maybe you need to make a decision. And I hadn't thought about that, but we may be losing people to that, which I'm actually okay with as long as we get new people, which we seem to be getting, new people, right? So a number of people had mentioned that there is, I mean, we could call it pushback or discussion or something, but there's definitely a feeling here that we don't have the assumption at this conference that the person who knows the most about a particular topic is the person in the front of the room. I've given talks where I talked about I've talked about move semantics, and Howard Hinnett is in the room, right? So that's a different kind of environment. There's a lot of conferences where we're excited to have this individual to come and talk to us about this because they're the acknowledged experts. But even when the acknowledged expert is talking about something at this conference, there's a number of other people in the room who helped with that paper or worked on that feature or something like that. So anybody want to talk about a particular interesting experience? Maybe it was in your own talk where there was a good discussion that went on. Maybe something that changed somebody's mind about something. Don't make a liar out of me. Somebody has to, okay.
So in your talk today about references in generic programming, I was moderating his talk, so I had to ensure that he was on time. And for like the first 45 minutes, he didn't even mention references at all in the talk about generic programming and references. Instead, there was just a gigantic discussion about regular types with the audience, so long that his laptop turned himself off twice. And I was like, I really worried he's not going to finish this on time. I have to stop it. But it worked out really great in the end. It was a great experience there.
Excellent. Anybody else have a...
So I attended one of the of Alisdar's talks about his vision for the future standard 2 library, STD2 for C++. And honestly, most of the talk was discussion between the audience, the presenter, and on the new features that would change the way we design interfaces and functionality of the standard library. So I think it was one of those talks where it's really valuable to be in person there, as you can get your opinions out and try collectively to decide and understand how we can have a very nice, safe, and rich interface for the future standard library, discussing with experts all around you. So that was a great experience.
If I can add to that, I was just in the third one of that. I thought you were not there.
I missed that one.
So that was the one in which he basically directly posed the question to the audience, as in, I'm having a mic that has a cable on it, because the wireless one is going all the way around the audience. Everybody has a say, everybody gets to decide, and in the end we're just going to have a bunch of votes, so we have a collective idea on where we stand. So if you want to have a say, come here and join the vote. Quite literally, you can just participate.
To drive the point home that the audience is very well informed, I talked about a library of which we had, I think, 5 known users. And I was able to have a discussion with the audience with many members who actually knew exactly how my library worked.
So it's my first time here, and I thought it was a huge eye-opener to hear about the different libraries and so on. But also that I could sit down over lunch or something like that for like a good hour and just talk to the person who actually wrote that library. And like we're talking concurrency libraries that are like in not even beta stage yet, but I think will have a huge impact on the community. And I don't think there's any other conference that you can get that type of experience as right here. So some more commercial.
I wanted to say, my first talk that I gave here ever was 2 years ago, and I was extraordinarily nervous. And like John said, you're presenting on something, and the person who wrote that part of the standard is probably in the audience. And I had, like I said, I was terrified to be up on stage. But then someone in the audience asked a question, and I didn't have a good answer for it. And fortunately, one of the people that was involved in the standard was right there and able to answer the question for me. So it really goes both ways and makes for a great experience.
Right. Well, I hope it's, I don't want to give people, even though when you talk about pushback and this, I don't want to give people the idea that we're playing gotcha or something like that. Yeah, it's very collaborative. What I've told people is that if you give a talk at this conference, you will know every syntax error in any of the code you show by the end of your talk. But that will not be presented in a cruel or a taunting or, so last night, I think, was it in Richard's, was it Richard's talk where he had misspelled a word on the title page, and so we gave him some static about that. But no, it's not that kind of. It's not that kind of. We're not playing games here. I think it's because there isn't anybody here who doesn't have an appreciation for how difficult it is to write C++ code, and we're not writing everyday C++ code. We're writing cutting edge C++ code, and so nobody's going to do that perfectly every time. And even after you think you've vetted all your slides and you think it's all perfect, it's not going to be perfect. And everybody here appreciates that. One of the things that I like about this conference is that the people who are here this year who are not speakers may very well be speakers next year. I mean, it's that kind of, and I like that feeling that that we're all here. We're not, as I said, we're not playing games. We're not trying to catch each other out and things like that. We're trying to support each other. We're trying to learn from each other. We're trying to maybe push each other a little. And we're also, I would like to think that we're also trying to encourage each other and support each other, because we, as I said, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things that we're trying to do. Anybody else want to? So I will say, Michael Case and I did our dueling lightning talks last night. So if anybody here wants to talk smack about Michael, you can have the mic as long as you want. Anybody want to talk smack about Michael? Odin wants to talk smack about Michael. All right. All right.
Actually, I think that there's a very good explanation from Michael that we shouldn't take the term modern C++ away from Andre.
Yeah, maybe some context.
Yeah, sorry. Their dueling lightning talks was a disagreement about what we should call the new form of C++, because modern C++, the book and the term coined by Andrei Alexandrescu, was a while ago, right? And
Predated 11.
Yeah, it predated 11. So modern code and modern C++, there seems to be some kind of discrepancy there, right? And I think we really shouldn't take that term away from him, right? And we should really sort of respect things that Andrei Alexandrescu has named. Plus, I think a modern version should have like a shorter name, because modern C++ is a lot to say. So it should just be kind of further along in sort of new. But yeah, so I think we should call it D.
So you see, this just shows how much community there is here, because Odin and I are friends. We're going to continue to be friends, even though he's completely wrong in everything he just said. Anybody else have an anecdote, something you want to talk about, something that was a surprise to you, perhaps, or is there a particular talk that just changed the way you think about C++, or changed the way you think about D, or did you get anything at any of the keynotes that you're wanting to run back and say, let's see how we do this in C++? And well, we don't have to stay on if there aren't comments. Oh, Peter has a comment.
Well, the one that I noticed in the Haskell talk was the separation that they have in their mind about shared immutable data and non-shared mutable data. And that separation is something I hadn't quite completely realized was as important as it is, because it's basically the reason why you shouldn't have to use a mutex or lock anything. So I figured that I learned a lot from that one. I think you also have one?
Yes. So I can think of a couple things. One is not from this year specifically, but I think the first year of this conference was when I think Sean Parent keynoted. Yes. And that definitely fundamentally changed the way that I approach writing templates in code. I think prior to that point, I was really young at the time, so I didn't have that much experience. But like prior to that, I thought I understood generic programming, but I really didn't. And I think ever since then, it just totally changed the way that I think about code whenever I write a template. And as Jonathan mentioned, this year I gave a talk on reference types in the generic programming paradigm, and a lot of it was just spent on the basics of generic programming and regular types. And I think I totally just wouldn't even be in that mindset if it wasn't for Sean's keynote in that first year. I'm trying to think. There was another one I had from this year that really did change the way. Oh, it was the Rust keynote. I just thought was absolutely fantastic. Rust is one of those languages that I've always wanted to go and explore and play around with, and I knew some things about it. Like I'd heard words like borrow checker or terms like that, and I heard that they had traits, which are something kind of like concepts, but I didn't know much about them. And what I learned was that Rust is an absolutely fantastic language, and and it's something I'm gonna be checking out and experimenting with. And I hope that the C++ community is able to learn something from it. That's all I have to say.
Also regarding the Rust keynote, when he sat there and talked about Rust, I've looked a bit at Rust previously, and I'm young. I'm not really committed to C++ yet, so I could just say, let's screw this. Let's just go Rust. It was nice seeing you. But I kind of like that C++ doesn't provide these kinds of features out of the box. For example, Louis gave a talk, Fun with Boost HANA, where he presented this library Dino, I think it is called, where he kind of emulated Rust traits and type erasure with meta programming and stuff like that. And this is like really fun to work. I do not have to use C++ seriously. I can just have fun with the C++ things I do. And that's probably why I continue using C++ for now, just because it's kind of fun to do those things, to work around the language, if you
I was really impressed by the metaprogramming capabilities of D in the keynote especially. And I feel like we take a lot of pride into the ability of C++ of deferring computational compile time, but there is a lot that we could learn from D, especially in terms of ergonomics and developer productivity when doing metaprogramming. So I'm really looking forward to see proposals such as the constructor blocks by Louis Dion or meta classes from Herb Sutter to go forward, because I feel like that brings us closer to the level of ergonomics that D allows when doing metaprogramming and compile time computation. And I want to be optimistic, and I would like to see a future where we can allocate and deallocate memory in constexpr, and maybe we don't even have to say constexpr and the compiler can figure it out. But that's probably crazy talk.
I found it very funny to see in the Rust keynote that there's a borrow checker and there's a bit of an explanation of how it works and all the details. And I think it was literally the evening after or the day after that I see Jonathan doing exactly that with an incredibly hacked solution in C++. As in, yeah, there's some pretty smart people here, and they're not always just the old people.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that regarding learning from other languages. Right after the keynote about Rust, Chandler gave an interesting critique down there at the break area. So he essentially said that Rust has a slightly different object layout, where they store the vtable, whether they store the pointer to the vtable as part of the pointers itself. So they're using fat pointers instead of regular pointers, and that's the way they implement traits. And he said that we could emulate those using metaprogramming facilities, and I think that's one of those major differences C++ has. So we try to implement other features through metaprogramming facilities, while Rust tries to limit the user as part of the language itself. And that's why I find the D keynote more interesting, because we can implement those things using metaprogramming facilities. And some things like if const expr have already landed in C++ that were initially D features. Yeah. Oh, and regarding const expr allocators, yeah, Jason already mentioned in his talk that there is a proposal out there regarding const expr allocators.
No,
That's Alex's proposal.
Oh, that's good to know.
He actually mentioned it in the talk. We did not know that proposal existed yet.
Hand the mic to Alex.
Maybe I should talk about context per allocator a little bit. So there is two solutions how we can get context per containers in C++. One solution, bad solution, is to implement context per vector, context per set, context per something else. And it's really bad because we should implement all containers what we have already. Another solution, better, we can really implement context per allocator and just write all methods of standard classes as context per. So second part is not really hard. Just fork lib C++ or lib stud C++ and do it. About context allocator, it's quite harder, but with Anthony Paluhin from Russia, we just wrote it and it's work. So we simply allocate memory on stack at compile time and it works. Simply works, and now we have context per vector, for example, as proposal.
Do you have time for questions?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes, a couple minutes.
So I'm really interested in this. I haven't seen the proposals, and I'm looking forward to read it. But have you actually built a formal model for like place menu, new and delete, and make them work with the standard wording in context per contexts? Or are you still like waiting for feedback from the committee before diving into the nitty-gritty details?
We wait for feedback from community. So we continue our work on context allocator, and we hope that it will work properly. And in C++ 20 or maybe C++ 23, we will have context per containers in our standard library.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys all for being here, participating, turning this into a commercial for C++ Now.
I only take cash.
Oh, okay. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't talk smack more about Michael. I mean, he's not here, so we would have gotten away with it, right? Yeah, for those of you that have not attended C++ Now, obviously, we think it's a good idea. I think it's a great conference. I think other conferences are great conferences, but this one is one where you feel like you're involved, not just in learning about the language, but you're actually involved in the future of the language and changing what's coming, and that's kind of a special feeling, and it makes it really nice. So we need to all say at the same time, we need to say safe coding. So are we ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. Safe coding. All right. Thank you very much.